so I guess I talk to the camera.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, so, well, welcome everybody here and remotely. This is the Yale Sites Drupal group, and I'm Nancy Flowers-Bangs, for those of you who don't know who I am. And today we're going to present a case study on Yale graduate housing. Yale graduate housing provides information on apartments and dormitories for people who are in the graduate school, and they did a total redesign of their site, and Lisa Maloney, who is the Director of Media Strategy and Project Management for the Office of Administration, will be providing us with the work that she did to get it moved into the Drupal 7 instance of Yale sites. Lisa does several websites and is in the process of moving quite a few over. She's pretty experienced in Yale sites Drupal 6 as well. So I think you'll find that she may offer some feedback as to how that transition is in the learning curve. She did yammer that Drupal 7, that she loves Drupal 7. So I'm just quoting. Anyway, but she also does the YPPS site, graduate housing, fleet management, which you're in the process of moving over, right, with BESA?
Yes.
Security, police, and she also was the overseer of the surplus site that you saw BESA give a demonstration of, which is up on our site. And for the people who are remotely listening, this presentation will be on the Yale Sites website, yalesites.yale.edu/videos. Once it gets live, we're going to stream it in there, so it will be available. So if you can't watch the whole thing or you want to review it again, you'll be able to see it. So I will turn this over to Lisa.
Thanks, Nan. So hi, everyone here and everyone out there listening. As Nancy said, my name is Lisa Maloney. I work in administration, and I'm here to talk about my design strategy for the graduate student housing site. One housekeeping note for folks here, we kind of talked about this. We're being recorded and filmed, so we're just asking that you hold your questions to the end of the presentation. Okay, so my strategy. Architect, analyze, update. I used this simple strategy to develop the grad housing site. I went to a presentation given by Nathan Galt, who was the former OISS webmaster. His presentation, which was entitled, "What the Heck is Web Strategy and How Can It Help Me?" really convinced me that kind of a simple step-by-step way to design a site. I have been working with a bunch of websites but don't have, a ton of experience designing them. So this really gave me hope that I could use this process. So I went back to the grad housing folks. I reviewed the process with them, talked about how we would use this for design and maintenance. They were on board with me. Renee, the woman that I actually worked with to develop and update this site, actually went to his presentation, and she was sold too. So that was good to have her on board. We told Nathan kiddingly that we both drank the Kool-Aid. So before we designed the site, we came up with some kind of 5 overarching goals for the new site, and I'm just going to read them from the slide. So basically, we wanted to reduce the amount of incoming calls and emails that the grad housing office gets. We wanted prospective students to read instructions and follow steps when applying for housing. We wanted to cut down the amount of redundant information that was on the old site. And we wanted to have the rooms and buildings presented more realistically. Lastly, we wanted to give the site a more up-to-date look. So that takes us to site development. I treated the folks at grad housing like a client, and I set up content meetings. In the first meeting, I went through something called a client questionnaire for site development, which I found on the Yale Sites page. More on that in a minute, but I will say that I found this extremely helpful. I have used it since, and I highly recommend using it, particularly in the first content meeting. I will note that the fact that I work for administration and I do work with all these different divisions, it helped that I was somewhat outside of their organization, so I had no preconceptions about things. I had only looked at the site maybe half a dozen times before the first meeting. I was able to actually go through and pretend I was a student looking for a room. I was able to question them about things I couldn't find, challenge them, and play really the devil's advocate. So the client questionnaire for site development. It has a couple of sections that you go through. So general information, the current site, reasons for redesign, audience, perception, tone, and guidelines, communication strategy, content creation, and site maintenance. Under each of those categories, it asks like 3 or 4 questions, and I'll just give you a couple of examples. So under audience, one of the questions was, describe a typical site visitor. Under perception, what do we want them to think or feel, and how will the new site help achieve this goal? So I sat down with Renee, we went through this document, I would ask her questions, we would talk back and forth, I would take notes. After we went through this process, which actually took 2 meetings, because the document is about 2 pages, but we were very thoughtful about it, we created a set of guidelines. It was 2 pages that kind of took us through the entire process of developing the site. We referred back to this document throughout the entire design phase, and even to the point where if I created a site and I needed to write text about something, I would refer back to this and say, okay, the perception, what did I want to make sure that I made clear to people? Oh, okay, great. So this document really kept us on track. The interesting little tidbit about using this document that I found out was the site owners don't always think about their customers as much as they should, which is kind of interesting. Not so much the graduate housing group, but the current site I'm working on, travel management. You have to keep coming back to saying to them in this process, but is that going to help your customer? Yes, you think it's good for you, but so it's kind of a good way of making people think more about what does their customer need, not what do they think should be up on the site. Okay, so there were some issues that the graduate housing folks wanted to overcome with the new design, and I will just run through them quickly. There were also reoccurring themes that came up, again, when we went through this questionnaire. So they wanted a more realistic representation of graduate housing not being Yale College. So they wanted the students to understand when they got here, they weren't going to be in Berkeley or Davenport in these Gothic buildings with a moat around them. They were going to be in apartments that were designed and built in the 50s up on Prospect Hill. When you think of Yale University, you think of excellence, and we felt that the old site, the feeling or the term excellence did not come to mind. Again, they wanted the students to kind of follow a 3 or 4-step process before they actually went to the online the application link. They wanted them to read some stuff because they felt they were skipping over that. That was really important. We wanted the site to be part of their lives once they became students here and once they moved here. So we were able to include information about news events, and we now have an online calendar. Really also important, we needed the photos, a lot of photos to represent graduate student life here, not just the buildings. And then lastly, of course, always consider the customer. So, sitemap creation. So we have our goals, our 5 goals. We have our guidelines, our 2 pages of guidelines. We have our issues and reoccurring themes. So we're ready to do our sitemap. Again, I borrow a page from Nathan's presentation. Post-it notes. Really simply, Post-it notes, put your main menu items on them, your secondary menus, throw them up on a wall. You're able to move them around. Renee also, again, she felt strongly about this. So she wanted to make a first attempt of it on her own, which she did. She went back to her office. She took the old site main menu links. She put them up on a wall. She used different color Post-it notes. She called me a couple days later. She said, come over. I took a look at it. We talked. We referred to the guidelines. We talked about our 5 goals. I literally took all of her Post-it notes back to my office and created this sitemap, which you see in Visio. I had never used Visio before. I have not used it since. I don't think it's the best way to represent this stuff, but I was able to put something down on paper where then I was able to show the rest of the staff and the director. He looked at it, they approved it, and we were actually then ready to go and start creating the site. I will say that this one is not the final menu items. We shorten them a lot more, but this is what we started with. So once we got the map approved, I was able to begin building the site, moving content, and then actually training Renee on how to use the Drupal program. So we built the site and launched it February 19th. It took about 9 weeks to build and train 2 people to edit. I spent an exorbitant amount of time on finding photos, cropping photos, and then the 360-degree pages, the jQuery tool that we're going to talk about, that was again a bit labor-intensive and a team effort. This apply page, which I'm showing right here, I can actually link to the site, was created out of those top 5 goals that we talked about. We really wanted students to go to this. Here's my menu item. So you see it's not application process, it became apply. We really wanted them to go to this, read it, and say, okay, these are the steps I need to take. So, were we successful? I signed this site up for analytics. All of my sites are signed up for analytics. I've created dashboards in each one that I have emailed to me every Monday so that I can kind of check and see where we're at. For this particular site, because it was brand new, I was checking it pretty much daily the first couple of weeks, and this is how it kind of turned out. So the top 10 pages that students were looking at in this order were how to apply, apply rates, application process, and building pages. I shared this information with the grad housing staff. They were really pleased and felt that that was the order of how they wanted students to look through the pages. So we felt very much that our redesign was a success. And of course, I continued to check analytics, and those pages, so many months later, still continue to be in the top 10 and pretty much in that order. So pretty briefly, lessons learned. It's really important to have one person that you work with because it makes the process go that much faster. She was my liaison to the rest of the group, though I often spoke with the director whose office just happens to be down the hall from mine. A downside to using a dev site, I won't use a dev site again. I had 2 big issues with it. When I got to a point where I wanted people to view it, we sent it out to a couple students. We sent it to some folks outside of Yale. They couldn't open it because they weren't on the Yale network. So that was a big pain. And we didn't know it at first, why it wasn't working. Of course, we figured it out later. The other thing was when we made the site live, that first week when I would furiously have to update stuff, if I went in and just typed the URL and I didn't notice that the dev came up, I was making updates to the dev site. So that was kind of a pain. The irony of, though it's good to work with one person, I did often sometimes feel disconnected from the rest of the group. Though I would try to contact them with email, I would send them pages. They didn't seem, even though we had a really tight deadline, to understand the urgency of all of it, which I found that a little frustrating. And I found it more frustrating the day before launch. They were saying, well, we don't like this page. And I was like, put my mean face on and said, nope, we're going with it. The client questionnaire form. I can't say enough about this and how much it helped. And I've used it since, and it's really great. And Nancy has promised that she's going to put it back up on the Yale Sites page.
I am.
I continue to analyze the site, make updates, and add photos, again, kind of completing that circle of how we do the design. Again, can't stress enough the importance of good photos, learning how to use Photoshop or some type of program where you can crop. I became a better Photoshop user, which was kind of great. And lastly, give yourself a cushion because it's definitely going to take longer than you plan. We were on a really tight schedule with grad housing. I'm thankful that the site I'm working on now, the travel site, I do have a lot more time because it is taking me longer than the 9 weeks that I thought it would. On to the 360-degree room views. And I will be joined by my very good partner in this, Nancy Flowers-Mangs. So just a quick review. On our old site, we had movie clips that were 360-degree views of some of the rooms. This is somewhat standard on regular grad housing sites at other universities. So we needed to have this on the new site. The folks in the grad housing said, yes, we have to have it. We can't just do photos, whatever. So I told Nancy. She and Victor went into their secret stash of modules.
We went to Drupal.org. That's where the secret stash is.
Right.
And did a little bit of research to look for a way to do the 360 views without having first we were looking for, because the original files were .mov files, so we couldn't put them up on YouTube. Plus they were 360, and YouTube doesn't support the 360 view. It will only do videos that run. So we weren't really sure what to do, but there is a jQuery real formatter that all by itself, aside from Drupal, exists. So it's a jQuery script that will actually create 360 views, and I'll show you where that information is. Let me just escape out of here. So it's a jQuery Real plugin, and so this is an actual script that if you were building a static HTML site, you could, or a dynamic site of any kind, you could actually put this script into your site. And as you can see from some of the examples here, I'm not sure how to do this without a mouse. Let me just click there. You can see how that's turning it around. Now that's using an image sprite, so I'll scroll down and show you how that works. But they've got many different small pictures of that one object, and the jQuery Real plugin actually does the turning around of it. What we did was more like the picture below, which is the mountain scene. So that I'm pressing down and holding and dragging, and it goes all the way around. And so that's what we did. The challenge, once we found the module, wasn't really so much about configuring the module to do this. The challenge was getting the pictures taken. And so it was really an interesting research project, but we were able to find it. And so I think the good news is that anytime we've ever had a challenge like this, we've always been able to find a solution on Drupal.org with a specific module, and again, providing that that module is available and technically sound, we're more than happy to add that module to the list of modules that are part of your Yale site's web service. So we did find, it's called the jQuery Real formatter, and just so you know that this is documented exactly how I did it for this instance, which is to create a panoramic room view. To do the sprite thing where you've got one object, if you're doing a shirt, you're on licensing and you're selling Yale shirts or Yale hats, and you want to have it spin around like that, you'll be able to figure it out using the jQuery Real plugin page, because there's some different configuration. But I'm going to give you the basics of how it was done. First of all, for the way that we did it with gradhousing, they used the phone to take the pictures. So on my iPhone, we found an app called PhotoSense, Microsoft PhotoSense. Apparently, it's built into your photo taker. I'm not that great at this stuff yet, but apparently it's built into your camera on your iPhone, which I just found out last weekend that there's a way. I didn't know that either.
Okay.
But there is a way to do that. But I can't show you the PhotoSense. But I basically turned on the PhotoSense, and I just snapped the picture around. And we did a few testing. I did some in my kitchen and the other rooms in my house just to test it out first. And so we did that. We saved it. I emailed it to Lisa, and then we had to figure out the cropping size so that we could get it to be the right size, because it's pretty big and it's a little bit scattered when you look at it. So she cropped it to a certain size. All the images were a consistent size. And then we used the jQuery Real formatter module to actually configure it. And I'll show you how that was done. Can we log into this?
Oh.
Can you log in?
Log in? Oh, Kazan?
Yeah,
sure.
Kazan.
I was going to show them. Yeah.
Oh, you want to show them what
I was going to show them what it looked like, but yeah,
okay.
I can Kazan at the same time and show them that.
I just wanted to show exactly how we did it. What ends up happening is you create within a content type. So we created a 360 view content type, and we had one image field that we created, just a regular image field.
Okay, I'm up.
But in that image field, we had two instances. So the first instance was the still shot, the picture that you wanted to show up on the page. So let's go to
we needed a thumbnail.
We needed a thumbnail first.
Yeah, I could go into the...
There. Where is it?
It says on the housing page. Right there. Click on that, and then drop
Got it.
with any of those. You just have to figure out one that has one. Probably Divinity has one.
Berkeley does. I think I did.
They do?
Right.
Oh, it does. Okay.
So here's the page. Now this was all done, the building out of the pages was all done with the content types and views to make sure that the panoramic views for the Berkeley apartments showed up on the Berkeley pages. But anyway, so here's one of ours, and I'm just pressing and holding and dragging so that you go through. And again, this was taken with an iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
No photographic experience,
Nope.
no big budget, just because we wanted to give people an idea of what the rooms would look like.
Yes.
We weren't looking for a big real estate kind of sales pitch, just so people would know when they came here. So that's basically how it works. Now when we go to, I'm going to click on Edit, and you'll see that here where we added the images, the first image is the still shot that's going to show up on the page when they first get there. And then below you can see the thumbnail is thinner and wider, although it looks like it's the same width. That's the longer one, which again, Lisa cropped the thumbnails to all be the same size,
yes.
and she cropped 360 view images to all be the same size. So we uploaded them, and where the configuration takes place is actually in the display of the image field here. So this is that 360, the image 360 view. In the format, I chose, instead of image, I chose jQuery Real, which shows up only, oops, I don't want to change that now.
No, please. I want my site go down.
Nope. So that only shows up if the jQuery Real module is enabled, which is just about clicking on the checkbox. And then over here, the gear shows up, and you go in here, and that's where you're going to configure how it works. Now, I will tell you that although this information is on the jQuery page, the Real plugin page, it was not intuitive to me. There are a lot of things here that we didn't use. So what I wrote in the instructions are the things that we did use that were important. And the stitched number was important, and then there was another one I can't remember right now, but I'll show you when we go there, when we go back to the page. But mostly I figured out that the stitched number, which is down here and it's set to 10,000, is what determined it going from the left to the right in a kind of organized way without just going like from one side to the other really quickly. So that starts out at 0. When it starts out at 0, it basically does nothing. And so I just kind of added numbers randomly, and I got up to 10,000. I thought, okay, that's flowing the way we want it to go. We're just going to leave it at 10,000. And that's the way it stayed. I think the other one was the spacing between the frames on the reel. And again, this was something that I just kind of poked around at. I'd like to tell you that I just kind of knew intuitively what to do, and that documentation was helpful. It may be helpful for some of you who have more experience with this, and that's great. And if you can offer any words of wisdom to us to share with the group at any point if you use this, we're more than happy to take it. But what I want to make clear is that the good news is I didn't have to deal with code, so I didn't have to worry about one comma being out of place and wondering if that was the problem. I just had to go into the module and pretty much point and click and change numbers around. It took a while. It was not something that I did, in 30 minutes, and there was a lot of testing that went on. But it was relatively easy, and it was much easier than trying to do it the other way, which would have been to try and actually code each movie in and store those movies somewhere else.
Right.
So because these aren't really movies anymore, they're images, they can actually be stored on your Yale site. You don't have to go to an external vendor, and you can set it up with the jQuery Real module pretty easily, I think. So so once this is set up, all you have to do is upload the images. That's the other good part. So okay.
And my lessons learned would be that the fact that this was kind of a team effort. So I was building the site, I was working with Renee, Nancy and Victor kind of figured this out. Nancy understood how it would work, and then we sent basically Renee and Betsy from Graduate Housing and several students out with their iPhones to take all of these pictures because, again, we were working under that deadline. So as I said to Nancy before, it was kind of a beautiful thing the way it worked out, because if I had to do that, it wouldn't have happened. We would have launched without that, and they would have been put on whatever. So everybody went out. We gave them a quick lesson in my office on how to do it. They would send me the movies. As they sent me the movies, I would crop things. They weren't movies, images, I guess.
Right, they're images.
I would crop them and put them up, and it came out really well.
Right, and I think the other good thing about that is that Lisa didn't also have to go out and find photography professionals. Now,
right.
There were some images, as I remember, the quality of the images, they needed to be redone.
Yes.
Because it took a little bit of getting used to where to stand to make sure, you can't stand right in front of the stove and expect to get a 360 view. So it did take a little bit of practice.
Yes, it did.
But it's still, relatively speaking, and there was no cost involved because you used people that were already part of the...
No. And the students were actually kind of excited that their room was going to be featured, so they were happy to do it for us. And, oh, I've got to make sure I clean. So, again, it was kind of a beautiful thing that all just, the moon and the stars aligned for it to happen. And it's part of those 5 original goals I talked about in the beginning. We wanted to really represent how things really look to people, and this was part of that. So we're happy about that.
So that's it. So it was good. And it was minimal. I mean, it was really minimal effort. I know she says that she worked with us a lot. We helped her a little bit is really what I would say. I think Lisa is not giving herself enough credit for how much work that she did and how much she struggled. But she did a great job, and